I told you guys my dad met the Lord in the Jesus movement, and he had done so many drugs in the 60s, he never wanted to have any more kids. And him and my mom had 2 little girls, and their marriage was completely restored after the wild, crazy stuff of their rock and roll lifestyle. And for 7 years, they had been walking with Jesus. And my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And she was 3 weeks away from a hysterectomy. And my dad got a phone call one morning from an old intercessor in their church. And he said, Ken, I had a dream about you last night. Can we meet up for coffee? And so he sits down with my dad. And he says, last night, the Lord came to me in a dream. And he said that you're going to have a son, and his name will be Jonathan David. And he's going to write songs, and he's going to walk with me. And my dad goes, this is crazy. We don't want to have any more kids, and my wife is 2 weeks away from a hysterectomy, and she has cancer right now. And so in this old barn where they had church, they prayed for my mom. She went back in, and the doctors rechecked her. All the cancer was completely gone. And 3 years later, I came into the world. All the nurses thought I was going to be a little girl. And one of the nurses said, he's going to be a funny boy with the name Jonathan David. A funny girl. And my dad said, no, it's going to be a boy, and his name will be Jonathan David, whether he's a boy or a girl. God gave us a word. And the first 18 years of my life, I never touched an instrument. I could care less about music. But I grew up going to a summer camp where my dad was the camp pastor. A year before I was born, this old intercessor called my dad, and he had another dream about him. And in this dream, my dad had just finished, in the natural, my dad had just finished recording this big record, and he was invited out to Nashville to join this record label. And he thought, man, this is success. We're going to leave this little town in North Carolina, move to Nashville, and start touring all over the world playing music. And the old intercessor said, I had a dream about you. And in the dream, he said, Ken, I saw you, and you were walking through the street of a bustling city. And you saw this beautiful woman in a red dress in the city. And this woman led you, and you followed her into her apartment. And when you got into the apartment, she turned into this monster and wouldn't let you leave. And my dad goes, whoa. He said, but then the dream faded, and you were sitting on a picnic blanket. And there was a picnic basket in the middle of the blanket. And out of the basket, little round discs. They were smaller than records. This is the 70s. He said they were silver discs, and they were shooting out all over the earth. And then from there, Ken, you were holding lambs in your arms as a shepherd. And my dad got on his face, and the Lord said to him, he said, the invitation to move to Nashville, not that Nashville's a bad place, I love Nashville, but for my dad, the Lord said, the invitation to move to Nashville is the world's version of success. But my version of success is family. And if you give yourself to family, I'll promote the music out of the heart of family, and it'll go all over the world. And so my dad became a camp pastor, and every summer I would go to camp and have these beautiful encounters with Jesus, and I began to fall in love with him. And it was the worship movement of the 90s, Delirious and Vineyard, and these songs we were singing at camp. And I came home from camp when I was 17. I went to my dad's room and said, Dad, do you have a guitar? I want to learn those songs because I want to keep my fire burning this year. And I'll never forget the smile that came across my dad's face. And so a year goes by. I started learning chords. I went off to England to do a ministry school, and my parents came to visit me while I was in England. And the week they were there, we were out one night with some friends, and my friend said, play your dad that song you've written. They handed me my guitar. I was nervous, and I had just learned a few chords, and I began to play this song I'd written. And I finished the song, and my dad's sitting on the other side of the room, and I look at him, and he's looking at me. He has these massive tears coming down his face. and this smile. He goes, son, did you write that song? I'm like, yeah, is it any good, Dad? He said, you have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear that song. I've been waiting 20 years to hear that song. Now, the thing was, my parents had told me my mom had been healed from cancer, but they never told me about the prophetic word with music. They just prayed into it. And they prayed into it because they didn't want to create a pressure. They just prayed into it. They wanted the presence to do it. And he began to tell me this story. He's like, well, before you were born, there was a word over your life about music. And I was just undone. A couple weeks later, I'm hanging out with the Lord, and he said, you think your dad had been waiting a long time to hear you sing that song? I've been waiting since the garden to hear that song. And that's not just for me, guys. It's for you. It's for the song of your life. And if I hadn't had a father who had been smiling and fighting for me, fear would have stolen my song.